It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at wcbe.org.
I'm John DeSando.
I'm Jordan Hanalami.
It's movie time.
Nice.
It's also election time,
It
Jordan.
is 50 days, I believe, today,
Oh,
actually.
all right. Now, Jordan, do you think there are any cautions here or any advice we need to take?
I think about an hour and 42 minutes worth. Yes, there very much is so. Yeah,
How about a documentary opening today?
yeah, All In. Coming on to Amazon Prime, I believe.
That's
Is that
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, powerful indeed.
All in the fight for democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what is it?
So it's a, what I think makes for a really solid foundation for a documentary. It's a broad scope concept of voting rights told through the eyes of a specific story down in Georgia with the governor race in 2018 with Stacey Abrams and Brett Kemp.
Kemp. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's framed by the Stacey Abrams loss
Mm-hmm.
to Kemp for the governor of Georgia, and she lost by a small percentage.
Very small, and that was a really big national story. I remember being, that really taking over there for a while.
Yeah, and you're right. It's really good for a documentary because it also takes an historical perspective about suppression.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is basically about manipulation of vote.
Yeah, it was. I felt like it was a nice, with obviously there's a strong context from the African American point of view within this, and it felt like a good kind of stepping stone from a movie with everything that's been going on this year. I think a documentary that's really resonated over the last from a few years ago that has become a reference point for a lot of people is the 13th.
Oh, yes.
The Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
Which offered a really broad scope of transition over the last 150 years for African Americans, and I felt like this was a kind of a next step in that evolution of some of that storytelling getting very specific about because they touch on voter stuff in that movie, but this one was all about that.
And it is, and it's really true. Talking about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which pretty much solidly confirmed that minorities would have the right to vote,
Mm-hmm.
particularly African Americans.
Yeah, and while this movie definitely plays into a lot of it's a lot of the conversation surrounds that, it also doesn't feel, it feels like it's still a bigger picture issue of you're learning about voter suppression in general.
Yes.
They obviously touch on the suffrage movement of women in the early 1900s.
Exactly.
And so there's a lot, obviously to deal with.
Latinos and Asians,
Yep.
who have all been discriminated against.
Right.
But how are they doing that when you have those solid amendments? And I think you have the voting rights package reconfirmed. So Jordan, how can there be? I mean, that's the reason I think that most recent Supreme Court decision, which kind of negated some of the voting rights because they were saying, look at Barack Obama is proof there isn't fraud anymore.
And there's the, just epic quote from RGB that was taking away those laws the way they did is like taking away your umbrella when it's raining because you don't think you're going to get wet.
Right, you're not getting wet. Exactly. So that took states like Texas to win the sprint race to get to
within hours of that. They said within like 2 hours of those being lifted, those rates being lifted, they were immediately diving in to find every little foothold they could, to make it happen.
Oh my God, the one that really dismays me, Jordan, is the one even for our Ohio. You supposedly count the number of times a person's voted.
Right.
And if that person doesn't meet a certain standard, they throw out their vote.
Yeah, it's one of those instances, I've heard actually, and I don't know that this is verified in any way, but I've heard Ohio is the third most mentioned state in TV and movies behind New York and California, which I always notice is a really random thing, but just I noticed after hearing that, everybody's always from Ohio and stuff. So anyway, I say that to say it's usually fun when you get to hear Ohio reference in something, and then in this one I was like, oh, I don't want to hear that.
And they talk about the usual thing, the gerrymandering.
Yes. Yeah.
Which has been fair game. It has been fair. and legal in many cases when you're doing it to support your party. I think that was the point.
Yeah,
Where you would think it wouldn't be, but it actually has been acceptable around the country. If you're in power, you can gerrymander your districts to give you favorable votes, and that's not illegal.
yeah,
But it is, of course, when you're doing it for ethnic and racial reasons, and to suppress the vote.
right,
And in this case, it comes down to Democrats carping about Republicans. Republicans want to suppress the vote. Even Trump himself has said, in some of the initiatives that have happened recently, no Republican could ever win if you ever allow. So he's admitted
right,
that they know that they're vulnerable for voting.
yeah.
And
Yeah, it's definitely, there is, I don't know, I guess it's one of those things where there's definitely, I guess, bias in the film for sure. It's definitely, you're hearing a specific side of it, but it's backed up by lots and lots of important information to make the points clear and stuff.
that's such an important view, what you've just said, for me, for documentaries. I'll bet I slam every documentary for having the bulk of what they present, their side of it.
Yep.
And you are so right, this looks really heavily loaded to the left. It's what it's going to be, but if I were doing a documentary like this, I would make sure that I had a reasonable voice come in from the right to counter.
Yep. Yeah, just to offer some sort of perspective.
Yeah.
There's plenty of times in some of these movies where you get told, hey, we tried to reach out to people or something, and just couldn't get feedback.
Right.
Even that is
Yes.
something, So that was definitely something that I was curious about with this movie, where it was, is there, everything, it didn't feel like anything, they were making up anything, in there as far as their information.
Right,
I just didn't,
right.
It always is nice to hear another perspective.
And yes, and in the case of documentaries, even, and I very much support this documentary, even in a very fine one like this one, there's always that hole, which is your opponent's point of view. And I'm certain that filmmakers are saying, why should we give them any part of our,
Yeah.
But when I look at it, if it were like a debate, I would want to hear what the other side said.
Absolutely.
All right, Jordan Hanalami. The movie is all in, the fight for democracy.
Yeah.
What grade do you award it?
I think I'm gonna say probably an A-.
Right.
Felt good about it.
And let me balance you out with an A.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And I guess Jordan and I are saying, look, it doesn't make any difference whether you're left or right. Why don't you look at this?
Yep, absolutely.
Because in the end, it's about preserving democracy.
It is, and that's, I think, a really important point to make, is that this, and I think Stacey Abrams drives it home really hard in the movie in a great way, which is an important, very important point, that they're not trying to force a political party on them. They believe in America, is what it is, I guess.
Yes.
They believe in America, and they want to just maximize what it stands for. So.